CEO's fake fiancée steals the show at wedding. Her beauty blows him away. Welcome to Stories TH. Dive into the captivating tale of James, a guarded CEO, and Emma, a passionate artist, whose fake engagement at a glamorous wedding sparks an unexpected love. Will their pretense turn into something real? Don't miss this heartwarming journey. If you love romance and drama, hit that like button and subscribe to Stories TH for more unforgettable stories. A CEO's unexpected love, a tale of control and connection. In the heart of Chicago, where skyscrapers pierce the clouds and the icy winds off Lake Michigan bite at the skin, James Caldwell stood as a titan of industry. At 38, the CEO of Caldwell Enterprises had built a multi-million-dollar empire, his name synonymous with precision and control. His penthouse, perched high above the city's glittering skyline, was a testament to his success. Polished ebony floors, charcoal gray walls adorned with abstract art, and floor-to-ceiling windows framing the urban sprawl below. Yet, as he stood in his tailored navy suit, loosening his tie with a restless hand, James felt an unfamiliar sting of inadequacy. For a man who commanded boardrooms with ease, his personal life was slipping through his fingers like sand. This vulnerability, as sharp and unwelcome as the February gusts outside, set the stage for a weekend that would challenge his meticulously ordered world and awaken emotions he had long suppressed. James's predicament was rooted in two looming threats. His mother, Eleanor Caldwell, a formidable matriarch with a penchant for matchmaking, and Vanessa Reed, his ambitious ex-girlfriend, whose presence at his younger brother's wedding promised chaos. Eleanor's emails, sweet but relentless, detailed her plans to introduce James to suitable women at the wedding, a 3-day affair at a luxurious resort in Lake Forest, just 30 miles north of Chicago. Vanessa, whom James had spent 6 months disentangling from, would attend as a guest of a distant relative, her knack for attention-seeking as predictable as the city's traffic. Exhausted by the prospect of dodging both his mother's schemes and Vanessa's manipulations, James devised a plan. Hire a woman to pose as his fiancée for the weekend, a temporary shield to secure peace. The idea, suggested half in jest to his efficient assistant, Laura Bennett, was unconventional but pragmatic. Find someone intelligent, discreet, and trouble-free, he instructed, his voice firm but tinged with resignation. Good pay, no complications. Laura, with her knack for solving impossible problems, found Emma Harper. James envisioned a professional, polished, reserved, someone who could blend into the background while reciting a scripted love story. He pictured a woman in a nondescript suit, perhaps a bit stiff, capable of smiling on cue and fading into the crowd. His plan was simple: control the narrative, survive the weekend, and return to his ordered life. But as he glanced at his Rolex for the third time in 5 minutes, pacing the penthouse's minimalist living room, a flicker of doubt crept in. Was this solution a sign of strength or a confession of the incompetence he loathed? The soft ding of the private elevator interrupted his thoughts, and Laura's voice crackled through the intercom. "She's here, Mr. Caldwell." The elevator doors slid open, revealing Laura, her blonde hair neatly tied back, tablet in hand, followed by a woman who was anything but what James had imagined. Emma Harper stepped into the penthouse, her presence like a burst of sunlight in the sterile space. She wore a simple dark blue midi dress, unbranded but perfectly fitted, accentuating her slender frame. Her chestnut hair fell in natural waves to her shoulders, framing an oval face with soft, unadorned features save for a touch of pink lip balm and a natural flush on her cheeks. But it was her eyes that stopped James cold, large, forest green, brimming with curiosity, intelligence, and a hint of defiance. She wasn't stiff or forgettable. She was vibrant, alive, and utterly disarming. For the first time in years, James Caldwell, a man who negotiated multi-million-dollar deals without flinching, felt his carefully laid plans waver. "Mr. Caldwell," Laura said, breaking the silence, "this is Emma Harper." Emma extended her hand, a small smile playing on her lips. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Caldwell. Or should I call you James?" Her voice was clear, warm, with a touch of playfulness that caught him off guard. "James will do," he replied, his tone hoarser than intended, shaking her hand slender but firm, not fragile. He tried to regain his composure, but her presence lingered like an unanswered question. Was her radiance an asset or a risk to his plan? Curiosity stirred in him, not just about her ability to play the role, but about the woman herself. Who was she, and why had she agreed to this charade? Emma's story was one of quiet struggle, far removed from James's world of wealth. In Chicago's eclectic Wicker Park, she ran the Book Haven, a cozy, rundown bookstore inherited from her late grandmother. The shop, with its creaky shelves and scent of aged paper, was more than a business. It was a sanctuary of memories, a link to the woman who had taught Emma to love books and art. But a new landlord, a faceless real estate firm, had tripled the rent, demanding a $15,000 deposit to renew the lease. Emma, a freelance illustrator with an erratic income, faced an impossible choice: lose the bookstore or find a miracle. Her childhood friend, Noah Carter, who helped at the shop, was horrified by the figure. "Where are we getting that kind of money, Emma?" he asked, his voice heavy with worry. The weight of the ultimatum pressed on her, a gnawing anxiety that kept her awake at night. When Laura's call came, offering $15,000 to pose as a CEO's fiancée for a weekend, Emma's first reaction was outrage. "I'm an artist, not an actress," she snapped, her pride bristling at the idea. But the thought of the Book Haven's dusty shelves, the stories they held, and the legacy she might lose softened her resolve. After a sleepless night and a heated debate with Noah, who reluctantly agreed, Emma met Laura at a quiet coffee shop. The contract was clear: no physical contact beyond necessary gestures, strict confidentiality, and a detailed script about a fictional romance. Emma signed, driven by necessity but wary of the deception. Suspense hung over her decision. Could she pull off the act, and at what cost to her dignity? Their first meeting in the penthouse was a clash of worlds. James handed Emma a thick file: family history, guest lists, and a line-by-line script about a love-at-first-sight encounter at a charity art auction. His commanding tone, honed in boardrooms, assumed compliance. "Stick to the script, smile, and don't draw attention," he said, his words clipped. Emma's pride flared. "Mr. Caldwell, your script is a bit cliché," she countered, her green eyes flashing. "If we fell in love at first sight, wouldn't it be more real if I, say, spilled coffee on your suit?" Her challenge, laced with humor, startled James. He wasn't used to being questioned, let alone by someone he'd hired. Yet her idea was better authentic, human. A spirited debate followed, their revisions weaving a story that felt less like a lie. For the first time, James felt a crack in his controlled facade, a grudging respect forming. Viewers, too, would feel a spark of excitement, sensing the chemistry beneath their banter. The 30-mile drive to Lake Forest was tense, the black luxury sedan slicing through Chicago's outskirts. James scrolled through financial reports on his tablet, avoiding Emma's presence. She gazed out the window, sketching the autumn trees in a small notebook. Her quick, vibrant lines caught his eye. "What are you drawing?" he asked, breaking the silence. "Just ideas," she replied, her voice soft but open. "The light through the trees is beautiful." Their conversation, hesitant at first, flowed into art, technology, and shared observations about Chicago's architecture. James was surprised by her insight, Emma by his depth beyond the CEO veneer. Curiosity bloomed, pulling viewers into their evolving dynamic. The Lake Forest Resort, a fairy tale castle on Lake Michigan's shore, buzzed with the Caldwell family's wealth and expectations. James's brother, Mark, and his fiancée, Lily, welcomed Emma warmly, but Eleanor's scrutiny was relentless. "What do you do, Miss Harper?" she asked, her tone icy. "I'm a freelance artist," Emma replied, unfazed, weaving truth with the script's fiction. Her grace under pressure impressed James, easing his anxiety. But Vanessa's arrival, in a striking red dress, shifted the mood. "James, darling," she purred, ignoring Emma, her possessiveness a clear threat. Suspense gripped the audience. Would Vanessa unravel their plan? As the weekend unfolded, James and Emma played their roles, hand-holding, shared glances, a slow waltz at the rehearsal dinner. "You dance beautifully," James whispered, surprised by his own sincerity. "My grandmother taught me," Emma replied, her smile genuine. Their conversations deepened, blurring the line between act and reality. When Vanessa spilled wine on Emma's dress, James's protective instinct flared, his icy warning to Vanessa stirring Emma's heart. His jealousy at a flirtatious guest further betrayed his feelings. Excitement mounted for viewers, who sensed love blossoming amid the pretense. The crisis came when Emma overheard Vanessa's plan to expose the fake engagement, armed with proof of the $15,000 payment. Fear paralyzed her. Exposure meant humiliation and the loss of her bookstore's salvation. At the wedding reception, Vanessa confronted her, brandishing an email screenshot. "You're a fraud," she sneered. James intervened, his face taut with anger. As Vanessa revealed the truth to the crowd, Eleanor's shock was palpable. James faced a choice: deflect or confess. Looking into Emma's tearful, resilient eyes, he chose truth. "I love Emma Harper," he declared, his voice ringing across the garden. "Our start was unconventional, but my feelings are real." The crowd gasped, Vanessa fled, and Emma's tears turned to hope. Surprise and inspiration washed over viewers, moved by James's courage. Back in Chicago, James gave Emma the $15,000, urging her to save the book haven. "I want to date you, Emma, for real," he said. Months later, they transformed the bookstore, hosting story readings and launching an online store. Sitting together in the cozy shop, James reading Emma's illustrated book, they built a love that bridged their worlds. Eleanor, softening, even visited. For American audiences, this tale of vulnerability, courage, and connection resonates, evoking curiosity, suspense, anxiety, fear, excitement, surprise, and hope, a reminder that love can rewrite even the most controlled plans. Emma's leap of faith, a struggling artist's journey to save her legacy. In the eclectic heart of Chicago's Wicker Park, where historic brick buildings housed indie coffee shops and vinyl record stores, Emma Harper stood surrounded by the scent of aged paper and the soft creak of wooden shelves. At 32, she was a freelance illustrator with a passion for children's books, her sketches breathing life into stories that captivated young readers. But her true anchor was the Book Haven, a cozy, rundown bookstore inherited from her late grandmother, Clara. The shop, nestled between a mural-covered cafe and a thrift store, was more than a business. It was a sanctuary, a tapestry of memories woven with Clara's love for literature and art. Every dog-eared novel, every faded cover held a piece of Emma's heart, a reminder of evenings spent reading by Clara's side. Yet, as she clutched a letter from the new landlord, a faceless real estate firm, Emma's world teetered on the edge of collapse. The rent had tripled, and a $15,000 deposit was demanded to renew the lease. For Emma, whose income fluctuated with the whims of freelance gigs, the figure was a crushing blow, igniting a storm of anxiety that threatened to unravel her dreams. The Book Haven was a modest space, its large front windows letting in the golden hues of autumn, its shelves crammed with secondhand books from Austen to Asimov. A small reading nook, with a worn velvet armchair and a lamp that flickered on stormy days, invited patrons to linger. Clara had built this haven decades ago, a refuge for dreamers in a neighborhood that pulsed with artistic spirit. Emma, who had spent her childhood dusting shelves and sketching in the margins of notebooks, had promised to keep it alive. But the reality of Chicago's gentrifying landscape was merciless. The landlord's letter, stark and impersonal, gave her 30 days to pay or vacate. Standing amid the stacks, Emma felt her chest tighten, the weight of losing her grandmother's legacy pressing down like a physical force. Her childhood friend, Noah Carter, who helped part-time at the shop, read the letter over her shoulder. "15 grand, Emma? That's impossible," he said, his voice heavy with disbelief. "We barely cover the old rent with sales." The truth stung. Her illustrations, though beloved, brought in a few $100s a month at best, and the bookstore's revenue was just enough to keep the lights on. Anxiety gnawed at her, a relentless fear that she would fail Clara, that the shop's stories would be silenced forever. Emma's days were a blur of desperation. She scoured her finances, considered loans, even thought of selling her grandmother's antique locket, a keepsake she wore daily. Each option felt like a betrayal, a step closer to surrender. Sleepless nights in her small Wicker Park apartment, just a mile from the shop, were filled with visions of empty shelves and locked doors. Yet, Amid this turmoil, a strange opportunity emerged. A call from Laura Bennett, an assistant to a CEO named James Caldwell, offered a job. Pose as James's fiancée for a 3-day wedding weekend at a resort in Lake Forest, 30 miles north of Chicago. The pay? Exactly $15,000, the precise amount Emma needed. The offer was as surreal as it was suspicious. "I'm an artist, not an actress," Emma snapped, her pride bristling at the idea of playing a role in a stranger's deception. The thought of pretending to be someone's fiancé, especially for a wealthy executive she'd never met, felt like a violation of her integrity. Yet, the image of the Bookhaven's dusty shelves, the smell of old books, and the looming threat of eviction haunted her. Could she really say no? The decision wasn't easy. Emma paced her apartment, the hardwood floors creaking under her restless steps. She imagined Clara's gentle voice, urging her to fight for what mattered. Noah, ever protective, was vehemently opposed. "This sounds like a scam, Emma. Or worse, some rich guy's game," he warned, his brow furrowed. But as they sat in the bookstore's reading nook, surrounded by Clara's legacy, Noah saw the desperation in Emma's eyes. After a long, heated debate, he relented. "If you're sure, I'll back you up. But be careful." Emma's heart raced with anxiety, the weight of the choice pressing down. Accepting the job meant stepping into an unfamiliar world of wealth and pretense, risking her dignity for a chance to save the shop. But it also sparked a flicker of hope, a lifeline to preserve the place that defined her. For American audiences, this moment resonates deeply, tapping into the cultural value of preserving family heritage against the pressures of modern economics. Emma met Laura at a discreet coffee shop in the Loop, a 10-minute train ride from Wicker Park. Over steaming mugs of coffee, Laura outlined the terms, a detailed contract specifying Emma's role, responsibilities, and the $15,000 payment. No physical contact beyond necessary social gestures like hand-holding or an arm around the waist was required, and her personal information would remain confidential. The job was to act as James Caldwell's fiancée at his brother's wedding, shielding him from his mother's matchmaking and his ex-girlfriend's schemes. Laura handed Emma a file with a scripted backstory, a love-at-first-sight meeting at a charity art auction. The irony wasn't lost on Emma, whose own art was her lifeblood. She signed the contract, her hand trembling slightly, a mix of anxiety and resolve coursing through her. The suspense of what lay ahead gripped her. Could she convincingly play a role so foreign to her nature, and what would it cost her emotionally? The day before the wedding, Emma arrived at James's penthouse, a stark contrast to her cozy, cluttered world. The 40th floor space, with its ebony floors and Lake Michigan views, felt cold despite its luxury. James, in a tailored navy suit, exuded authority, his sharp features softened only by a loosened tie. Emma, in a simple blue dress, felt out of place, her heart pounding with nervousness. She expected a curt transaction, but James's reaction surprised her. His gaze lingered, his usual control faltering as he took in her natural beauty and confident demeanor. "James will do," he said, shaking her hand, his voice betraying a hint of unease. The exchange was brief but charged, stirring curiosity in both. For viewers, this moment crackles with excitement. The clash of their worlds, Wicker Park's bohemian charm versus downtown's opulence, highlighting class differences familiar to American audiences. When James handed Emma the script, his commanding tone grated on her. "Stick to the script, smile, don't draw attention," he said, as if she were another employee. Emma's pride flared. "Your script's a bit cliché, James," she retorted, suggesting a more authentic story, like spilling coffee on his suit. Her defiance, laced with humor, caught him off guard, sparking a lively debate that reshaped their backstory. The interaction, though tense, planted a seed of mutual respect. Emma's anxiety eased slightly, replaced by a cautious hope that she could handle the role. For audiences, this exchange is thrilling, a glimpse of chemistry that promises more than a business arrangement. The drive to Lake Forest was quiet, the luxury sedan gliding along highways lined with autumn trees. Emma sketched in her notebook, capturing the light filtering through the foliage, while James focused on his tablet. Their hesitant conversation about her illustrations, his company's innovations revealed shared curiosity, softening the tension. At the resort, a grand estate on Lake Michigan's shore, Emma faced the Caldwell family's scrutiny. Eleanor's probing questions tested her, but Emma's grace and wit shone, bolstered by the script and her own authenticity. Vanessa's arrival, dripping with hostility, heightened the stakes, her dismissive glance at Emma a clear challenge. Suspense hung over the weekend. Could Emma maintain the facade under such pressure? As the wedding events unfolded, Emma's role grew more complex. Holding James's hand, dancing with him, she felt the lines of pretense blur. His protective gestures, like shielding her from Vanessa's barbs, stirred unexpected warmth. Yet, the threat of exposure loomed, Vanessa's scheming a constant shadow. Emma's journey, driven by the desperate need to save the Brookhaven, resonated with hope and fear, a testament to the American spirit of fighting for what matters. Her story, set against Chicago's vibrant backdrop, captivates viewers, evoking anxiety at her precarious situation, hope for her success, curiosity about her dynamic with James, and excitement for the romance that might unfold. A spark in the penthouse, James meets Emma. High above Chicago's glittering skyline, in a penthouse that gleamed with the cold elegance of success, James Caldwell stood poised yet restless. At 38, the CEO of Caldwell Enterprises was a master of control, his multi-million-dollar empire a testament to his precision. The 40th floor apartment, with its polished ebony floors, charcoal gray walls, and sparse abstract art, reflected his wealth but also his isolation. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed Lake Michigan's restless waves, their icy shimmer mirroring the unease James felt as he glanced at his Rolex for the third time in 5 minutes. His tailored navy suit, tie slightly loosened, betrayed a rare impatience. In just moments, a woman he'd hired to pose as his fiancée for a weekend wedding would arrive, a calculated solution to deflect his mother's matchmaking and his ex-girlfriend's schemes. James had envisioned a professional, stiff and unremarkable, someone who would recite his scripted love story and fade into the background. But as the private elevator's soft ding echoed through the minimalist space, an unexpected encounter was about to unravel his carefully laid plans, igniting emotions that would captivate American audiences with surprise and excitement. James's decision to hire a fake fiancée stemmed from a personal life he could no longer manage with his usual authority. His mother, Eleanor Caldwell, a regal matriarch, had planned to parade suitable women at his brother Mark's wedding, a 3-day affair at a luxurious resort in Lake Forest, 30 miles north of Chicago. Vanessa Reed, his ambitious ex-girlfriend, would also attend, her presence a guaranteed spectacle. Exhausted by the prospect of navigating these pressures, James had tasked his assistant, Laura Bennett, with finding a discreet, intelligent woman to play the role of his fiancée. Good pay, no complications, he'd instructed, picturing someone who could blend seamlessly into the opulent chaos of a high-society wedding. The penthouse, with its stark decor and panoramic views of the city's skyscrapers, was the perfect stage for this transaction, a place where James controlled every detail, from the temperature to the lighting. Yet, as he paced the living room, a flicker of doubt crept in. Was this plan a mark of his ingenuity or a silent admission of the incompetence he despised? The elevator doors slid open, and Laura stepped out, her blonde hair neatly tied back, tablet in hand as always. Behind her was a woman who shattered James's expectations in an instant. Emma Harper, a 32-year-old freelance illustrator from Wicker Park, entered the penthouse with a presence that felt like a warm breeze in the sterile space. She wore a simple, dark blue midi dress, unbranded but perfectly fitted, accentuating her slender, graceful frame. Her chestnut hair fell in natural waves to her shoulders, framing an oval face with soft features, a touch of pink lip balm, a natural flush on her cheeks, and no trace of the heavy makeup James was accustomed to seeing at galas. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold, large, forest green, brimming with curiosity, intelligence, and a quiet defiance. She wasn't the stiff professional he'd imagined. She was vibrant, alive, and utterly disarming. For a man who negotiated multi-million-dollar deals without flinching, James felt his breath catch, his meticulously ordered world tilting off its axis. Surprise rippled through him, a sensation that would echo with American viewers, who relished the unexpected spark of a romantic encounter. "Mr. Caldwell," Laura said, her voice cutting through the charged silence. "This is Emma Harper." Emma extended her hand, a small smile playing on her lips, confident yet warm. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Caldwell. Or should I call you James?" Her voice was clear, with a playful lilt that caught him off guard. "James will do," he replied, his tone hoarser than intended, shaking her hand slender but firm, not fragile. The brief contact sent a jolt through him, stirring a curiosity he hadn't anticipated. Who was this woman, and why did her presence feel like a challenge to his control? For audiences, this moment is electric, the first hint of chemistry that promises a story beyond the contract. Emma's natural beauty and poise, set against the penthouse's cold luxury, highlight the class differences familiar to American viewers, evoking the classic Cinderella trope with a modern twist. James tried to regain his composure, retreating to the familiar ground of authority. He handed Emma a thick file, a detailed dossier on the Caldwell family, a list of wedding guests, and a scripted backstory about a love-at-first-sight meeting at a charity art auction. "Stick to the script, smile, and don't draw attention," he said, his voice clipped, as if addressing a junior executive. The words were meant to reassert control, to keep the interaction transactional. But Emma's response was anything but compliant. "Your script's a bit cliché, James," she said, her green eyes flashing with a mix of humor and challenge. "If we fell in love at first sight, wouldn't it be more real if I, say, spilled coffee on your suit?" Her words, sharp yet playful, hit like a curveball. James blinked, unaccustomed to being questioned, let alone with such wit. For a moment, he was silent, processing the audacity of this woman he'd hired. American audiences would feel a surge of excitement here, drawn to Emma's boldness and the spark it ignites. The challenge in Emma's eyes was no accident. She had agreed to the job out of desperation, driven by a $15,000 rent increase threatening the Bookhaven, her grandmother's beloved bookstore. The money James offered was a lifeline, but it came at the cost of her pride. Standing in his penthouse, surrounded by wealth she could scarcely imagine, Emma refused to be diminished. Her work as an illustrator demanded creativity and authenticity, and she wasn't about to play a role that felt like a bad rom-com. Her suggestion, a spontaneous, human moment like a coffee spill, wasn't just a critique, it was a declaration of her agency. James, intrigued despite himself, conceded her point. "Fine," he said, a rare crack in his controlled demeanor. "Let's revise it." What followed was a lively debate, their voices overlapping as they crafted a new backstory, a chance encounter at an art gallery, a shared laugh over a quirky painting, a connection that felt plausible. The penthouse, with its stark walls and Lake Michigan views, seemed to warm slightly, the air buzzing with their unexpected synergy. For viewers, this exchange is a highlight, a moment where surprise gives way to anticipation. The playful back and forth, laced with humor and mutual respect, hints at a chemistry that transcends the contract. James's initial shock at Emma's appearance, her radiant, unpolished beauty, evolves into admiration for her intelligence. Emma, meanwhile, senses a depth in James beyond his CEO facade, a vulnerability that piques her curiosity. The contrast between their worlds is stark. James's penthouse, with its minimalist decor and 40th floor isolation, embodies his detachment, while Emma's Wicker Park life, filled with art and community, pulses with warmth. This clash, set against Chicago's iconic skyline, resonates with American audiences who recognize the cultural tension between wealth and authenticity. As they finalized the script, James felt a shift. Emma wasn't just a hired hand. She was a force, her confidence challenging his need for control. He wondered, briefly, if her vibrancy would draw the attention he'd hoped to avoid. Yet, her intelligence reassured him she could handle the wedding's scrutiny. Emma, too, felt a mix of emotions, nervousness about the role, but also a flicker of excitement at the spark between them. The debate had revealed a side of James she hadn't expected, a man capable of listening, even if reluctantly. For audiences, this moment is thrilling, the first step in a romance that promises to unravel both characters' defenses. As they prepared to leave for Lake Forest, James glanced at his watch. "The car's waiting," he said, his tone professional but softer. Emma nodded, tucking the revised script into her bag. The penthouse, with its cold elegance, seemed less imposing now, touched by the warmth of their interaction. The 30-mile drive ahead would test their newfound rapport, but the seeds of something real had been planted. For American viewers, this encounter is a captivating blend of surprise James's stunned reaction to Emma's presence and excitement, as their debate sparks a connection that hints at love. Set in Chicago's luxurious heart, it's a modern fairy tale that promises a journey beyond the facade, inviting audiences to root for a romance that defies expectations. Navigating the wedding weekend, a dance of deception and connection. The Lake Forest Resort, nestled along the serene shores of Lake Michigan, gleamed like a fairy tale castle under the late summer sun. Its sprawling grounds, dotted with manicured gardens and elegant stone pathways, buzzed with the anticipation of a high-society wedding. For James Caldwell, the 38-year-old CEO of Caldwell Enterprises, and Emma Harper, the freelance illustrator hired to pose as his fiancée, the three-day event was a high-stakes performance. 30 miles north of Chicago's glittering skyline, this upscale venue familiar to American audiences for its quintessentially luxurious charm was both a stage and a battleground. James needed Emma to shield him from his mother Eleanor Caldwell's relentless matchmaking and the disruptive presence of his ex-girlfriend, Vanessa Reed. As they stepped into the resort's grand lobby, hand in hand, their carefully rehearsed act faced immediate scrutiny. For American viewers, the weekend unfolds with suspense and anxiety, as the constant threat of exposure and Emma's discomfort with deception keep hearts racing, wondering if their facade will hold or crumble under pressure. James had orchestrated this plan with his usual precision, hiring Emma to play the role of his fiancée to ensure a peaceful weekend at his brother Mark's wedding. His penthouse meeting with Emma had already shaken his expectations, her vibrant beauty and bold wit challenging his controlled approach. Now, at the resort, the stakes were higher. The couple's backstory, revised after Emma's insistence on authenticity, painted a romance sparked at an art gallery, complete with shared laughs and subtle glances. James had drilled Emma on the Caldwell family history and key guests, expecting her to blend in while deflecting attention. But as they entered the lobby, with its crystal chandeliers and marble floors, James felt a twinge of unease. Emma, in a flowing cream-colored dress that caught the light, was anything but invisible. Her natural grace drew eyes, and James wondered if her radiance would complicate his plan. The suspense was palpable. Could she navigate the social minefield without exposing their lie? Emma, too, felt the weight of the moment. The $15,000 payment for this job was her lifeline to save the Bookhaven, her grandmother's beloved bookstore in Wicker Park, but the cost was her comfort. Lying didn't come naturally to her. Every forced smile and rehearsed gesture grated against her integrity. As she gripped James's hand, her pulse quickened, anxiety surging at the thought of facing Eleanor Caldwell, a woman whose reputation for sharp judgment preceded her. Vanessa Reed, James's ex, was another looming threat, her hostility evident in their brief encounter in Chicago. The resort's opulent setting, with its lakeside views and string quartets, felt like a gilded cage, amplifying Emma's discomfort. For viewers, her internal struggle resonates, tapping into the American value of authenticity clashing with necessity, as they worry about the emotional toll of her deception. The Caldwell family greeted them with varying degrees of warmth. Mark, James's younger brother, was a warmer, more open version of the CEO, his easy smile putting Emma at ease. "You must be Emma," he said, pulling her into a friendly hug. "James can't stop talking about you." The lie, delivered with a wink, was meant to sell their act, and Emma managed a convincing laugh. Lily, Mark's fiancée, mirrored his warmth, her genuine kindness a brief reprieve from the tension. But Eleanor Caldwell's arrival shifted the atmosphere. A regal figure in a tailored Chanel suit, her platinum hair perfectly coiffed, she appraised Emma with razor-sharp eyes. "Miss Harper," she said, her voice as cold as the Lake Michigan breeze. "James has never mentioned you before. What do you do?" The question was a test, and Emma felt the room's attention converge on her. Suspense gripped viewers. Would Eleanor's probing unravel their carefully crafted story? Emma drew on the script and her own resilience. "I'm a freelance artist, Mrs. Caldwell," she replied, her tone calm but firm. I specialize in illustrating children's books. Eleanor's raised eyebrow signaled skepticism. An artist? That sounds unstable. Is your family from Chicago? The barrage of questions about her background, education, and connections was designed to find a flaw. Emma, prepared by James's dossier and her own quick wit, answered with grace. She spoke of her passion for art, inherited from her grandmother, and deftly sidestepped financial queries by pivoting to her love of Chicago's cultural scene. A discreet nod from James bolstered her confidence, and she added a touch of mystery, hinting at a private life she preferred to keep low-key. Eleanor, though not fully convinced, seemed momentarily disarmed by Emma's poise. For audiences, this exchange is nerve-wracking, the anxiety of potential exposure heightened by Emma's ability to hold her own against a formidable opponent. Vanessa Reed's entrance, however, escalated the tension. Sweeping into the lobby in a tight red dress, her golden hair cascading and her smile sharp, she ignored Emma entirely, linking arms with James. "Darling, it's been too long," she purred, her possessiveness a clear challenge. Turning to Emma, she offered a saccharine apology. "Oh, I didn't see you there. You must be the fiancée." Her tone dripped with condescension, and Emma felt a surge of unease. "Nice to meet you, Ms. Reed," she replied, mirroring Vanessa's fake smile, her composure masking the anxiety within. Vanessa's hostility was a wild card, her every word laced with intent to disrupt. Viewers feel the suspense intensify, wondering if Vanessa's jealousy will expose the truth before the weekend even begins. The wedding event's rehearsal dinners, cocktail parties, and lakeside barbecues demanded constant performance. James and Emma played their parts, holding hands as they strolled the resort's grounds, sharing affectionate glances during toasts, and standing close during introductions to business associates. At first, their interactions were stiff, James unaccustomed to public affection and Emma wrestling with the lie. But necessity forged a rhythm. During a slow waltz at the rehearsal dinner, under the glow of fairy lights, their movements synced unexpectedly. James, who danced only out of obligation, noticed Emma's grace, her ease softening his usual reserve. "You're a natural," he murmured, a rare compliment slipping out. "My grandmother taught me," Emma replied, her smile genuine for the first time. The moment, fleeting but intimate, hinted at a connection beyond the act, stirring excitement in viewers who sense a spark. Eleanor's scrutiny persisted, her questions growing sharper at each event. At a cocktail party, she handed Emma a glass of expensive Chardonnay, asking her opinion on the vintage. Emma, unfamiliar with fine wines, took a sip and admitted, "I'm not a wine expert, but the label's design reminds me of Art Nouveau." Her pivot to art, her area of strength, was clever, earning a subtle nod from James. Vanessa, meanwhile, seized every opportunity to undermine Emma, her barbed comments and knowing glances sowing doubt among guests. During a lakeside barbecue, she accidentally bumped into Emma, spilling wine on her dress. James's quick intervention, handing Emma a napkin with a protective glare at Vanessa, was instinctive, his anger barely concealed. The incident, though small, heightened Emma's anxiety, the constant pretense and Vanessa's hostility wearing on her. For audiences, these moments are fraught with tension, the fear of exposure mingling with admiration for Emma's resilience. Despite the strain, James and Emma found moments of ease. During a quiet walk along the lake, they shared stories, Emma about her bookstore, James about his company's latest project. Their conversations, unscripted and natural, revealed mutual curiosity, softening the edges of their facade. James's protective gestures, like placing an arm around Emma's waist when Vanessa approached, felt less like acting and more like instinct. Emma, though uneasy with the deception, sensed a depth in James, a loneliness beneath his polished exterior. These glimpses of connection keep viewers on edge, the suspense of their act balanced by the excitement of a budding romance. The Lake Forest Resort, with its fairy tale charm and quintessentially American grandeur, amplifies the stakes. Its lakeside setting, familiar to viewers as a backdrop for upscale celebrations, contrasts with the tension of James and Emma's performance. For American audiences, the story resonates with cultural themes of navigating social expectations and the pressure to conform, while Emma's struggle with lying evokes empathy. The weekend, fraught with suspense as exposure looms and anxiety as Emma grapples with her role, captivates viewers who root for her to triumph over Eleanor's scrutiny and Vanessa's schemes, hoping for a love that might transcend the pretense. Blurring the lines, a romance blossoms at the wedding. The Lake Forest Resort, a fairy tale haven on the shores of Lake Michigan, glowed under the soft September light, its gardens adorned with golden autumn foliage and twinkling fairy lights. 30 miles north of Chicago's bustling skyline, this quintessentially American venue pulsed with the romance of a high-society wedding. For James Caldwell, the 38-year-old CEO of Caldwell Enterprises, and Emma Harper, the freelance illustrator hired to pose as his fiancée, the three-day event was a delicate dance of deception. Hired to shield James from his mother Eleanor's matchmaking and the disruptive presence of his ex-girlfriend Vanessa Reed, Emma had navigated the weekend's scrutiny with grace. But as the wedding festivities unfolded, rehearsal dinners, lakeside barbecues, and elegant cocktail parties, the line between their scripted romance and genuine feelings began to blur. Shared moments, protective instincts, and unexpected vulnerabilities wove a connection that thrilled American audiences, igniting excitement and hope as James and Emma's chemistry hinted at a love that could transcend their pretense. James had entered the weekend with a clear plan: maintain the facade, avoid complications, and return to his controlled life in Chicago's downtown penthouse. Emma, driven by the $15,000 needed to save her grandmother's bookstore, the Bookhaven, had agreed to the role despite her discomfort with lying. Their first meeting had sparked an unexpected chemistry, her bold wit and natural beauty challenging James's expectations. At the resort, they'd faced Eleanor's probing questions and Vanessa's hostility, performing as a couple with hand-holding and affectionate glances. But as the wedding events demanded more intimacy, their act grew less mechanical, each interaction revealing glimpses of authenticity. The romantic ambience, lakeside views, soft jazz, and the rustle of autumn leaves amplified the emotional stakes, setting the stage for a connection that neither had anticipated. For viewers, the resort's idyllic setting, familiar as a backdrop for upscale American celebrations, heightens the anticipation, drawing them into a modern fairy tale where love might triumph over artifice. The turning point came during the rehearsal dinner, held in a grand ballroom overlooking the lake. Under the glow of chandeliers, guests mingled, their laughter mingling with the clink of champagne glasses. James and Emma, dressed in coordinated elegance, him in a charcoal suit, her in a flowing sage-green dress, played their parts, standing close as they chatted with relatives. When Mark, James's brother, and his fiancée Lily pulled them onto the dance floor for a slow waltz, the moment felt like a test. James, who danced only out of social obligation, felt stiff at first, his movements precise but guarded. Emma, guided by memories of her grandmother's lessons, moved with effortless grace, her hand light in his. As the music swelled, their steps synced, the rhythm drawing them closer. "You're a natural," James murmured, his voice low, a rare compliment slipping past his defenses. "My grandmother taught me," Emma replied, her smile soft and unguarded, her green eyes catching the light. The intimacy of the moment, their bodies swaying in unison, sent a thrill through viewers, the excitement of a romantic spark palpable. In that fleeting dance, something shifted. James noticed the warmth of Emma's hand, the way her laughter lit up her face. Emma sensed a softness in James, a crack in his polished CEO facade. Their conversation drifted from the script, touching on small, personal details: Emma's love for sketching lakeside scenes, James's quiet admiration for Chicago's architecture. The ballroom, with its romantic ambience, seemed to cocoon them, the world fading as they spoke. For audiences, this scene is electric, the slow waltz a metaphor for their growing connection. The hope that their fake romance could become real resonates with American viewers, who cherish stories of love's transformative power, especially against a backdrop as iconic as Lake Michigan's shore. The chemistry deepened through shared moments across the weekend. During a lakeside barbecue, as golden leaves drifted from the trees, James and Emma sat on a blanket, sharing stories away from the crowd. Emma spoke of the Bookhaven, her voice tinged with passion as she described its creaky shelves and the children who loved her story readings. James, typically reserved, opened up about the pressures of running Caldwell Enterprises, his tone revealing a loneliness he rarely acknowledged. Their laughter over a quirky guest's antics felt natural, their glances lingering longer than necessary. These quiet exchanges, set against the resort's autumnal beauty, stirred hope in viewers who see the potential for a real relationship despite the contract. The contrast between James's wealth and Emma's bohemian world, Chicago's skyscrapers versus Wicker Park's indie charm, grounds the story in a familiar American tension, making their connection all the more compelling. James's protective instincts surfaced unexpectedly, revealing a depth to his feelings. At a cocktail party, Vanessa, ever the provocateur, accidentally spilled red wine on Emma's cream-colored dress, her smirk betraying intent. Emma froze, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment as guests turned to stare. Before she could respond, James stepped in front of her, handing her a silk napkin with a steady hand. "Be careful, Vanessa," he said, his voice low but laced with warning, his eyes icy. The act was instinctive, a shield against Vanessa's cruelty, and it sent a jolt through Emma. Her heart raced, not just from the humiliation, but from the warmth of James's defense. For viewers, this moment is thrilling. James's protectiveness a sign of genuine care that fuels excitement for their evolving bond. The incident, set in the resort's elegant garden, underscores Vanessa's threat, keeping audiences on edge with suspense about her next move. The spark intensified when James felt an unexpected pang of jealousy. During the barbecue, a charming guest, a college friend of Mark's with a playboy reputation, flirted with Emma, complimenting her art and lingering too close. Emma, polite but uninterested, smiled through the exchange, but James's reaction was visceral. He approached, slipping an arm around her waist, his touch possessive. "Sorry, we're having a private conversation," he said, his tone sharp, pulling Emma away. The move surprised her, her eyes widening at the intensity in his gaze. "You okay?" she asked, half teasing, as they stepped aside. James, caught off guard by his own reaction, muttered, "Just didn't like his attitude." The admission, though gruff, betrayed a vulnerability that softened Emma's view of him. For audiences, this jealousy is a delicious twist, the excitement of James's unspoken feelings mingling with hope that Emma might reciprocate. Emma, too, began to see James differently. His protective gestures and rare moments of openness, like when he shared a childhood memory of building model ships, revealed a man burdened by expectations. Beneath his tailored suits and commanding presence, she sensed a loneliness that mirrored her own struggles to preserve her grandmother's legacy. During a quiet walk along the lake, as the sun dipped below the horizon, James's hand brushed hers, and she didn't pull away. The gesture, unscripted and tentative, felt more real than any part of their act. Emma's discomfort with lying lingered, but her growing affection for James eased the guilt, planting seeds of hope that their connection could outlast the weekend. Viewers, captivated by these tender moments, feel the pull of a romance that defies the contract, rooting for a love that could bridge their disparate worlds. The wedding's romantic setting amplified every emotion. The resort's lakeside views, with waves lapping against the shore and autumn leaves swirling, created a dreamy backdrop that contrasted with the tension of their deception. Vanessa's hostility and Eleanor's scrutiny loomed, but James and Emma's growing closeness offered a counterpoint, a beacon of possibility. For American audiences, the story resonates with cultural themes of authenticity versus pretense, the resort's grandeur evoking familiar venues like those in the Hamptons or Napa Valley. The narrative's blend of excitement from the waltz and protective moments and hope, as their feelings deepen, keeps viewers invested, eager to see if love can triumph over the facade. As the weekend progressed, James and Emma's chemistry became undeniable, each glance and touch blurring the line between fake and real. The resort, with its romantic allure, was no longer just a stage but a catalyst, drawing them closer. For viewers, this chapter is a heart-pounding mix of anticipation and optimism, a testament to love's ability to bloom in the most unexpected places, set against a quintessentially American backdrop that feels both aspirational and relatable. Vanessa's threat, a wedding reception on the brink. The Lake Forest Resort, a shimmering jewel on Lake Michigan's shore, glowed with the warmth of a late summer evening. Its sprawling gardens, adorned with string lights and lemonade stands, buzzed with the joy of a wedding reception, a quintessentially American celebration familiar to audiences from coast to coast. 30 miles north of Chicago's towering skyline, the venue's fairy tale charm masked a brewing storm for James Caldwell, the 38-year-old CEO of Caldwell Enterprises, and Emma Harper, the freelance illustrator posing as his fiancée. Hired to shield James from his mother Eleanor's matchmaking and the schemes of his ex-girlfriend Vanessa Reed, Emma had navigated the weekend's scrutiny with poise. But as the reception unfolded, a chilling discovery threatened to unravel their carefully crafted deception. Vanessa, armed with proof of their fake engagement, plotted to expose them, plunging Emma into a spiral of fear and suspense that captivated American viewers, who held their breath, anxious for the outcome of a confrontation that could humiliate her and shatter their fragile bond. The wedding weekend had already tested James and Emma's resolve. Their initial meeting in James's Chicago penthouse had sparked an unexpected chemistry, her vibrant beauty and wit challenging his controlled demeanor. At the resort, they'd faced Eleanor's probing questions and Vanessa's hostility, performing as a couple with hand-holding and shared glances. Moments like their slow waltz at the rehearsal dinner had blurred the line between pretense and genuine affection, stirring hope that their connection could outlast the contract. Emma's $15,000 payment was her lifeline to save the Bookhaven, her grandmother's bookstore in Wicker Park, but the emotional toll of lying weighed heavily. The reception, with its festive garden setting and lakeside views, should have been a moment of triumph, a final act before returning to Chicago. Instead, it became a battleground, as Vanessa's scheming pushed their facade to the breaking point. Emma's descent into fear began during a quiet moment at the reception. Seeking a break from the crowd, she slipped into a small break room near the garden to catch her breath. The room, lined with floral arrangements and catering supplies, was a temporary refuge from the pressure of playing James's fiancée. As she leaned against a table, adjusting her cream-colored dress, she overheard a voice through the slightly ajar door. Vanessa's, sharp and confident, speaking on the phone. "Relax," Vanessa said, her tone dripping with malice. "I've got proof. A rundown bookstore in Wicker Park, payments from Caldwell to keep it afloat. One email to Eleanor, and their little act is over." Emma froze, her heart pounding, the words slicing through her like a cold wind off Lake Michigan. Vanessa knew about the $15,000, the contract, the desperation that had driven Emma to accept the job. The bookstore, her grandmother's legacy, was her weakness, and Vanessa had it in her crosshairs. Fear gripped Emma, a visceral dread that public exposure would not only humiliate her, but also jeopardize the money she needed to save the Bookhaven. For viewers, this moment is chilling, the threat of disgrace resonating with American audiences who understand the sting of having personal struggles laid bare. Emma's mind raced, torn between confronting Vanessa and warning James. Telling him risked exposing her vulnerability, confirming she was just a hired hand of failure in his eyes. Her pride, already bruised by the deception, held her back. She imagined the scene. Vanessa revealing the truth to Eleanor, the guests whispering, her dream of saving the bookstore crumbling under their judgment. The anxiety was suffocating, each scenario more humiliating than the last. Yet, silence felt like surrender, leaving her at Vanessa's mercy. Emma slipped back to the reception, her face composed but her hands trembling. The garden, with its soft music and clinking glasses, felt like a trap, the string lights casting long shadows that mirrored her unease. Viewers feel the suspense intensify, drawn into Emma's internal struggle, wondering if she'll find the courage to act or if Vanessa will strike first. The reception was in full swing, guests toasting Mark and Lily under a canopy of stars. James, in a tailored black suit, mingled with business associates, his arm occasionally brushing Emma's as they maintained their act. Their earlier moments shared stories, protective gestures had deepened their connection, but Emma's discovery cast a pall over her performance. She forced smiles, her green eyes scanning the crowd for Vanessa. James, sensing her tension, leaned close. "Everything okay?" he asked, his voice low. Emma nodded, the lie bitter on her tongue, her fear of exposure outweighing her trust in him. The moment underscored her isolation, a reminder that their bond, however real it felt, was built on a contract. For audiences, this tension is heart-wrenching, the anxiety of Emma's secret amplifying the stakes of their fragile romance. Vanessa's confrontation came as Emma stepped away to the lemonade stand, the citrus scent mingling with the evening air. Dressed in a striking red gown, Vanessa approached, her smile cold and predatory. "We need to talk, Miss Harper," she said, her voice soft but venomous. "Or should I say actress?" Emma's stomach churned, but she held her ground. "I don't know what you're talking about," she replied, her tone steady despite the dread pooling within. Vanessa's smirk widened as she pulled out her phone, displaying a screenshot of an email exchange between Laura and a mutual contact, detailing the $15,000 payment and Emma's role. A penniless artist, desperate to save a crumbling bookstore, Vanessa sneered. "You're a fraud, and I can prove it. Leave now, or I show this to Eleanor and every guest here." The words hit like a physical blow, Emma's fear spiking as she imagined the humiliation guests staring, Eleanor's disdain, the bookstore lost. Suspense grips viewers, the confrontation a dramatic peak that leaves them anxious for Emma's next move. Emma's voice trembled, but she fought to maintain composure. "You have no right," she said, her eyes flashing with defiance. Vanessa laughed, her confidence unshaken. "I have every right to expose a gold digger like you." The standoff, set against the garden's festive backdrop, was a stark contrast to the celebration around them. Guests danced nearby, unaware of the drama unfolding, their laughter a cruel reminder of the public stage Emma risked being exposed on. Her mind raced. Should she call Vanessa's bluff, risk everything, or walk away? The bookstore's future hung in the balance, and with it, her grandmother's legacy. For American audiences, this moment taps into the cultural fear of social judgment, the dread of having one's vulnerabilities weaponized, making Emma's plight deeply relatable. James's arrival shifted the dynamic. Noticing Vanessa's approach, he'd sensed trouble, his protective instincts kicking in. Seeing Emma's pale face and Vanessa's triumphant smirk, he stepped between them, his presence a shield. "What's going on, Vanessa?" he asked, his voice tight with anger, his eyes narrowing. Vanessa, undeterred, held up her phone like a trophy. "Look, James, your fiancée is a hired fraud. She's been playing you for $15,000 to save some bookstore." Her voice rose, drawing the attention of nearby guests, including Eleanor, whose expression darkened. The garden's cheerful ambience faltered, the string lights casting an eerie glow on the gathering crowd. Emma's heart sank, the fear of public humiliation now a reality. She braced for James to deflect, to protect his image, but his next move would redefine their story. Viewers are on edge, the suspense of Vanessa's revelation and Emma's vulnerability creating a cliffhanger that demands resolution. The Lake Forest setting, with its relatable American charm, grounds the drama in a familiar context. The garden reception, with its lemonade stands and lakeside views, evokes countless summer weddings, making the stakes feel personal. For audiences, the story's blend of fear, Emma's dread of exposure, and suspense, as Vanessa's threat unfolds, is a gripping roller coaster. The narrative resonates with American values of resilience and authenticity, as viewers root for Emma to weather the storm and for James to prove their connection is more than a contract. This pivotal moment, charged with emotional intensity, sets the stage for a resolution that could either break or solidify their bond, keeping audiences captivated by the promise of love amidst betrayal. James's confession, a love declared under the stars. The Lake Forest Resort, a radiant gem on Lake Michigan's shore, shimmered under a canopy of stars, its garden aglow with string lights and the soft hum of celebration. 30 miles north of Chicago's towering skyline, the wedding reception for James Caldwell's brother Mark and his bride Lily unfolded in quintessential American splendor, a scene familiar to audiences from countless summer nuptials. The air was thick with the scent of blooming roses and lemonade, but beneath the festive veneer, a storm of drama was reaching its peak. James, the 38-year-old CEO of Caldwell Enterprises, and Emma Harper, the freelance illustrator hired to pose as his fiancée, had navigated a weekend of scrutiny from James's mother Eleanor and hostility from his ex-girlfriend Vanessa Reed. Their fake engagement, a shield against Eleanor's matchmaking and Vanessa's schemes, had sparked real feelings, blurring the line between pretense and truth. But as Vanessa prepared to expose their deception at the reception, the stage was set for a moment that would change everything. James's bold, public confession of love for Emma, defying his controlled persona, stunned the crowd and ignited surprise and hope, captivating American viewers with a dramatic declaration that marked the dawn of a true romance. The weekend had been a high-wire act. James, accustomed to commanding boardrooms, had hired Emma to ensure a peaceful 3 days, offering her $15,000 to save her grandmother's bookstore, the Bookhaven, in Wicker Park. Their first meeting in his Chicago penthouse had revealed an unexpected chemistry, Emma's wit and radiance challenging his expectations. At the resort, they danced, shared stories, and faced Eleanor's probing questions, their growing closeness hinting at something real. But Vanessa's discovery of their contract proof of the payment tied to Emma's bookstore had cast a shadow. Emma, overhearing Vanessa's plot to expose them, had wrestled with fear and pride, choosing silence over confiding in James. The reception, with its garden setting and festive crowd, was meant to be their final performance, but Vanessa's confrontation had pushed them to the brink. As guests in formal attire toasted the newlyweds, the tension was palpable, a classic American wedding drama amplified by the public stakes. The crisis erupted when Vanessa cornered Emma near the lemonade stand, her red gown a stark contrast to the garden's soft glow. Brandishing a phone screenshot of an email detailing the $15,000 deal, Vanessa sneered, "You're a fraud, Miss Harper. A hired actress." Emma's heart pounded, her fear of humiliation surging as she imagined Eleanor's disdain and the loss of her bookstore's lifeline. "You have no right," she stammered, her voice trembling but defiant. Vanessa's smirk was triumphant. "I'll show this to everyone unless you leave now." The confrontation, witnessed by a few guests, drew attention, the festive chatter faltering. James, sensing trouble, approached, his face taut with concern. "What's going on, Vanessa?" he demanded, stepping beside Emma, his presence a shield. Vanessa seized the moment, her voice rising to carry across the garden. "Your fiancée is a lie, James," she declared, holding up her phone. "She's a gold digger you paid to play a role. Here's the proof, an email about $15,000 for her pathetic bookstore." The words landed like a thunderclap, guests gasping, Eleanor's eyes narrowing as she stepped closer. Suspense gripped viewers, the threat of exposure a knife's edge, leaving them anxious for Emma's fate. Emma stood frozen, her green eyes glistening with unshed tears, the weight of public scrutiny crushing. She braced for James to deflect, to protect his image as the unflappable CEO. In his world of multi-million-dollar deals, damage control was second nature. Admit a misunderstanding, shift blame, or walk away. The old James would have chosen the easy path, preserving his reputation before his mother, business associates, and Chicago's elite. But as he looked at Emma, her face a mix of hurt and resilience, something shifted. He saw the woman who'd challenged his cliched script, danced with him under fairy lights, and shared quiet stories by the lake. The jealousy he'd felt when another man flirted with her, the instinct to shield her from Vanessa's cruelty, these weren't part of the act. They were real, raw, and undeniable. In that moment, James realized he wasn't just protecting a plan. He was protecting her, the woman who'd cracked open his guarded heart. For viewers, this pause is electric, the anticipation of his choice fueling a surge of excitement. Taking a deep breath, James faced the crowd, his gaze steady, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "Vanessa, you're wrong," he said, his tone sharp but calm, locking eyes with his ex. "Emma isn't a fraud." He paused, letting the words sink in, then turned to Eleanor, whose shock was evident. "Yes, our relationship started unconventionally," he admitted, his honesty startling the guests. "We kept it private for reasons of our own." Then, turning to Emma, his eyes softened, filled with a tenderness that caught her off guard. "But my feelings for Emma are real. There's no lie in that." Stepping closer, he took her trembling hand, his touch warm and grounding. "I love Emma Harper," he declared, his voice resonating across the garden. I'm the luckiest man alive that she's by my side, no matter what." The confession, bold and unscripted, was a seismic shift from his calculated persona, stunning the crowd into silence. For American audiences, this moment is a breathtaking surprise. James's vulnerability defying expectations and igniting hope for a love that transcends the contract. James wasn't done. Turning back to Vanessa, his eyes hardened. "As for Emma's bookstore or her personal life, that's none of your business," he said, his voice a low growl. "But know this. If Emma needs support, whether it's saving her bookstore or chasing her dreams, I'll be there. Not because of a contract, but because I love her and care about her happiness." The words were a gauntlet thrown, a public vow that silenced Vanessa. Her face paled, her red lips pressing into a thin line as she realized her plan had backfired. Unable to bear the crowd's curious stares, she turned and fled, her heels clicking on the cobblestone path. Eleanor, her expression a mix of shock and disapproval, stood rooted, her mind grappling with her son's defiance. Mark and Lily, watching from the sidelines, exchanged a knowing smile, their support unspoken but clear. For viewers, the scene is a triumph, the hope of authentic love rising from the ashes of deception, resonating with American values of courage and sincerity. Emma, tears streaming down her cheeks, looked up at James, her heart a tumult of emotions. The fear of humiliation had given way to a fragile, overwhelming joy. His confession, so raw and public, was more than she'd dared hope for. She'd sensed his vulnerability before his loneliness, his protectiveness, but to hear him declare his love before Chicago's elite was staggering. Her hand tightened in his, the warmth anchoring her as she processed the moment. The garden, with its string lights and lakeside breeze, seemed to hold its breath, the festive setting amplifying the drama. Guests murmured, some with admiration, others with curiosity, but the spotlight was on James and Emma, their connection laid bare. For audiences, this pivotal moment evokes a surge of hope, the belief that love can overcome even the most tangled beginnings, a theme that strikes a chord in the American heart. The public setting, with guests in formal attire and the garden's relatable charm, mirrors countless American wedding dramas, making the stakes feel immediate. The lemonade stands, the soft music, the autumnal glow all ground the story in a familiar context, amplifying the emotional impact. James's confession, a bold stand against his mother's expectations and Vanessa's malice, transforms him from a controlled CEO to a man driven by passion. For Emma, it's a lifeline, restoring her dignity and igniting a dream of a real relationship. The narrative's blend of surprise James's unexpected vulnerability and hope, as their love takes root, captivates viewers who are inspired by the power of authenticity. This moment, charged with raw emotion, marks the start of a true romance, leaving audiences eager for the next chapter in James and Emma's journey, set against the timeless backdrop of a lake forest night. A new chapter, James and Emma's love and legacy. In the vibrant heart of Chicago's Wicker Park, where indie shops and historic brick buildings pulsed with bohemian charm, the Bookhaven stood as a beacon of resilience. Once teetering on the brink of closure, the cozy bookstore, its shelves brimming with secondhand novels and its reading nook warmed by a flickering lamp, had become a symbol of hope for Emma Harper, the 32-year-old freelance illustrator who'd fought to preserve her grandmother's legacy. 30 miles south, in the glittering skyscrapers of downtown Chicago, James Caldwell, the 38-year-old CEO of Caldwell Enterprises, had once ruled his multi-million-dollar empire with unyielding control. Their worlds, once divided by wealth and circumstance, had collided during a fateful wedding weekend at a Lake Forest resort, where a fake engagement blossomed into real love. Now, months after James's public confession of love, their partnership, both romantic and professional, ushered in a new beginning. As they revived the Bookhaven and nurtured their relationship, James and Emma's journey, set against a quintessentially American backdrop, inspired viewers with hope and excitement, celebrating the power of second chances and community connection. The wedding had been a crucible, testing their facade and forging something true. Hired to pose as James's fiancée to deflect his mother Eleanor's matchmaking and his ex-girlfriend Vanessa's schemes, Emma had navigated scrutiny with grace, driven by the $15,000 needed to save her bookstore. Their chemistry sparked in James's penthouse, deepened through dances and shared stories, had culminated in a dramatic moment when Vanessa exposed their contract. James's bold declaration of love, silencing Vanessa and shocking Eleanor, had marked a turning point, transforming their act into a promise. As the reception's string lights faded and the Lake Michigan breeze carried away the tension, James and Emma faced a choice: return to their separate lives or build something real. For American audiences, that moment was a beacon of hope, resonating with the cultural belief that love can rewrite even the most unlikely stories. In the quiet aftermath, under the silver moonlight by the lake, James and Emma had their first private conversation since the confession. The resort's fairy tale grounds, now serene, felt like a sanctuary. Emma, her heart still racing from the public drama, spoke first. "James, what you said, are you sure?" Her voice trembled, uncertainty mingling with longing. James, his sharp features softened by the moonlight, met her gaze. "Every word, Emma," he said, his tone unwavering. "I'm sorry for dragging you into this mess, for the hurt it caused. But these days with you, I wasn't pretending. I'm falling for you." His admission, awkward for a man and used to vulnerability, was a gift, and Emma felt her defenses crumble. "I feel it too," she whispered, her green eyes glistening. "But our worlds are so different. Can this work?" James, understanding her fear, pulled a check from his pocket, the $15,000 owed under their contract. "Take this for the bookstore," he said, placing it in her hand. "But I want more than a deal. I want to date you, Emma, for real, if you'll have me." The gesture, respectful of her independence, ignited excitement in viewers who saw the promise of a love built on mutual respect. Returning to Chicago, reality pulled them in opposite directions. Emma threw herself into saving the Bookhaven, using the $15,000 to pay the new deposit and begin renovations. The shop, nestled between a record store and a coffee shop, was a labor of love, its creaky shelves repainted, its windows polished to lead in the autumn sun. Her illustrations, vibrant and whimsical, adorned new displays, drawing in families from Wicker Park's eclectic community. Yet, doubts lingered. Was James's confession a fleeting reaction to the wedding's drama? Her heart, stirred by his protectiveness and vulnerability, wrestled with the gap between her bohemian life and his corporate world. James, back in his 40th floor penthouse with its Lake Michigan views, felt a similar void. Meetings and profit margins filled his days, but the sterile elegance of his life seemed emptier without Emma's warmth. Her bright smile, her intelligent questions, the quiet comfort of her presence haunted him. For audiences, this tension is relatable, reflecting the American struggle to bridge personal differences in pursuit of love. James knew words alone wouldn't suffice. To win Emma's trust, he needed action. One crisp Saturday, he traded his tailored suits for khakis and a navy sweater, driving his sports car from downtown to Wicker Park, a neighborhood alive with street art and indie vibes, a world away from his skyscraper domain. Parking a block from the Bookhaven, he walked to the shop, its open doors spilling soft jazz into the street. Through the dusty glass, he saw Emma in paint-stained overalls, her hair in a messy bun, wrestling with a heavy oak bookcase. Her face, streaked with sweat, glowed with determination as she worked to revive her grandmother's dream. The bell jingled as James entered, and Emma's eyes widened in surprise. "James, what are you doing here?" she asked, her voice a mix of confusion and caution. "I thought you might need help with that bookcase," he said, rolling up his sleeves, his smile disarming. The gesture, unscripted and sincere, melted Emma's defenses, stirring excitement in viewers who relished the romance of unexpected gestures. Together, they tackled the bookcase, their laughter filling the shop as they traded jokes and stories. Sitting among piles of books, they spoke openly, James about the loneliness of his success, Emma about her dreams for the bookstore. The moment, cozy and unguarded, marked a new chapter. James proposed a partnership. Caldwell Enterprises Community Fund could sponsor children's story readings and build an online sales platform for the Bookhaven. "It's a business proposal, not charity," he said, respecting her independence. "I believe in this place and in you." Emma, touched by his faith, agreed, seeing a chance to grow the shop and their bond. For audiences, this collaboration is thrilling, a testament to the American value of small business resilience, amplified by the warmth of their evolving love. Months later, the book haven thrived. Its shelves, now organized and vibrant, welcomed families for weekend readings, Emma's illustrations bringing stories to life. The online store, designed with Caldwell's tech expertise, generated steady income, securing the shop's future. Noah, Emma's friend and assistant, beamed with pride, grateful for the turnaround. James became a regular, trading boardrooms for the shop's reading nook, where he and Emma shared quiet moments. One autumn afternoon, as golden sunlight streamed through the windows, they sat together, James engrossed in one of Emma's illustrated books, Emma sketching his profile, her smile soft. Their love, no longer bound by contracts or roles, had grown into something solid, supported by Mark and Lily, who frequented the shop, their warmth easing Emma into the Caldwell family. Even Eleanor, initially skeptical, began to soften, her calls to James less critical, once asking about that charming artist. For viewers, these scenes evoke hope, the bookstore's revival and their romance a celebration of second chances. The book haven's cozy transformation, with its community events and local charm, reflects American values of entrepreneurship and connection. Wicker Park's indie spirit, contrasted with Chicago's corporate heart, grounds the story in a relatable tension, making James and Emma's partnership feel authentic. The narrative's blend of hope, the shop's survival, and their deepening love and excitement, from quiet moments to collaborative triumphs, captivates audiences who are uplifted by the idea that love and perseverance can bridge divides. James and Emma's journey, from a fake engagement to a shared future, is a modern American fairy tale, set against a backdrop of community and resilience. As they sat in the shop, the bell jingling with new customers, James closed the book and met Emma's gaze. "Hiring you was my best decision," he said, his voice warm. Emma laughed, her eyes bright. "The best personal one, you mean?" Their shared smile, framed by the shop's warm glow, was a promise of love, of legacy, of a future built together. For American viewers, this satisfying conclusion, rich with emotional depth, reinforces the power of love to transform, leaving them eager to share a story that celebrates connection in the heart of Chicago. The romance of James and Emma in the CEO's Fake Fiancé offers timeless lessons that resonate deeply, touching the hearts of those seeking meaning in love and life. James, a guarded CEO, learns that vulnerability is not weakness but a gateway to genuine connection, teaching us to lower our walls and embrace raw emotions, even when fear looms. Emma's unwavering fight to save her grandmother's bookstore reveals the power of honoring personal legacies, urging us to cherish and protect what defines us, no matter the odds. Their journey from a staged engagement to true love underscores the courage of authenticity, living true to oneself despite societal pressures or past mistakes. The revival of the book haven, fueled by community and collaboration, reminds us that shared dreams can breathe life into fading hopes, encouraging us to seek support and pursue passions at any age. Above all, their story radiates hope, affirming that it's never too late for second chances, whether in love, purpose, or rebuilding broken bonds. For anyone feeling trapped by routine or fear, James and Emma inspire us to take risks, open our hearts, and trust that love and resilience can transform our lives. Let their tale be a gentle nudge to embrace new beginnings with grace and optimism, knowing that the heart's truest desires are always worth pursuing. Thank you for watching this heartfelt story on Stories TH. We hope James and Emma's journey left you inspired. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to Stories TH for more romantic tales and emotional adventures. See you in the next story.